Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Today reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, Text 18. Tavachamasya nivirvinam Nivishodishnyam asodi Amshinaroma vikandam Yasopatipadyate Chamasya vinirvinam Nivishodishnyam asodi Amshinaroma vikandam Yasopatipadyate Chamasya vinirvinam Vishuddhishyam asodi Sinarama vikandam Yasopatipadyate
Vachamasya vinirvinam Vishuddhishnya bhusvati Amshenaroma vikandum
Vacham skin Asya of the gigantic form Nivirvinam being separately manifested Vivishu entered Jishyam the controlling deity Ashodi sensations Apshena with parts Romabi through the hairs on the body Gandham itching Yai by which Ashu the living entity Patipadyate experiences. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: when there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deity of sensations and their different parts entered into it, and thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due to touch. For sense perception, purport. Therefore, sense perception, there are two principal items, touch and itching. And both of them are controlled by the skin and hairs on the body. According to Vishwanatha Chakravarti, the controlling deity of touch is the air passing within the body. And the controlling deity of the hairs on the body is Ashobhya. For the skin, the object of perception is touch, and for hairs on the body, the object of perception is itching. That's an interesting verse. So here we're reading about reading about the demigods who are entrusted with the management of different universal affairs. So we hear that from the Vedas. There's like 33 million demigods who are just managing every little tiny facet of material creation. Even the management of the little aspects of our bodies, like seeing and hearing and touching. You know, when you read these Vedic literatures, you realize there's a lot more going on in this universe that I didn't know about. And actually, when you start reading these Vedic literatures, the more you read them, and the deeper you go into this knowledge, you still realize there's a lot more going on in this universe that I didn't know about. So this universal form of the Lord is an external manifestation of the Supreme Lord of Krishna, which manifests at the time of creation. It's not an eternal form. There's no universal form in the spiritual world, the Loka Vrindavan. It only manifests at the time of creation. It's not an eternal form. For it's said to be an imaginary form of the Lord. Because factually, the Lord has no material form. So Prabhupada does mention in previous verses here I was reading that the form is to enable less intelligent persons to adjust the idea of the Lord having a form. Prabhupada mentions in the second canto that this form of the Lord, this cosmic manifestation, is both simultaneously a favor and it's also a challenge. And the reason why it's considered a favor is because for all those persons who cannot pin their faith on an idea that God has a spiritual form, or as Prabhupada mentions in those purports, that for those people whose brains cannot accommodate the idea that God can be a person and have a form, by respecting different facets of nature, because people have great awe and respect, don't they? People are awestruck by the amazing, wonderful facets of creation. You know, the huge mountains, the Himalayan mountains, you know, the vast oceans, the sun, the moon, all the different varieties of life and beautiful flowers and fruits. I mean, it's just an incredible, complex, beautiful creation. So when people meditate and begin to appreciate and respect these incredible facets of material nature, they get purified, because indirectly they're offering respect to the Supreme Lord. And this eventually helps them to cultivate a service attitude and ultimately, eventually accept the Lord's form. It's also said to be a challenge. Why a challenge? A challenge to the atheists. All those mundane philosophical wranglers who claim that they themselves are God. Prabhupada mentions it's a challenge to them, because if you say that you're God, then let's see your universal form manifest. Because Prabhupada mentions in one verse that they don't even have no idea what the universal form is. They may come up with this idea that they saw the white light, or they saw something like that. Actually, I met one who was distributing books one day in Brisbane. And we met one such man who was an impersonalist. And we said, well, sir, if you're God, can we see your universal form? And we were waiting there for a couple of minutes, and he said, did you see it? We said, no, we didn't see it. He said, you don't have the eyes to see. So, this material creation, we're reading about this in this chapter. It comes into existence at a certain time. It becomes manifested for a certain time, and then after some time it becomes unmanifested and goes into a dormant state. it says it enters into the body of the Lord. And it remains, and there's like a little cloud in the corner of the spiritual world. And when it's time for the new creation to take place, the Lord, as a super soul, he enters within the material elements and sets creation into motion. Then he impregnates all living entities into the womb of the material nature, just to give them a chance to liberate themselves. Actually, Prabhupada mentioned in this previous verse here that the suspended progressive work of creation can only be revived by the direction of the Lord. You know, if we want to do something, if you want to achieve something in life, it doesn't come so easy. You've got to, there's always so many impediments and obstacles and difficulties. But when Krishna wants to do something, he can do it so easily, just by his desire. He's systematically conducting all the affairs of both spiritual and material universes, trillions of universes, just by the waving of his magic wand, just by the raising of his eyebrow, just by his desire. All these amazing things are going on. And Prabhupada used the example just as the body, just at the time of conception, when the sperm and the ovum mix, there's a soul there. And because there's a soul there, the body develops, doesn't it? It goes into the size of a plum, and then it expands, and eventually it becomes a fully grown child in the womb. All because of the presence of the soul. It's not just happening, it's not just an interaction of chemicals, and suddenly life just spontaneously manifests. So this entire cosmic body, this whole cosmic manifestation increases and expands because of the presence of the super soul within it. And in this chapter, Prabhupada mentions, he's talking about the impersonalists and the materialists. They think that the control behind this gigantic manifestation is simply imaginary. And the Mayavadis, they imagine that this material cosmic manifestation, which is just an imaginary, temporary form of the Lord, is real. And the personal form of the Lord is illusory. They think the complete opposite of what it really is. And this is because this incredible universal form, this cosmic manifestation, it's like the Lord himself. It's inconceivable. It can't be comprehended merely by mental speculation, material intelligence, mundane scholarship, material logic. Therefore, we see Krishna, he's given us these Vedic literatures. As I was saying, when you read these Vedic literatures, you realize there's a lot more going on in this universe that we didn't know about. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this creation. He says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me, Krishna says. And those persons who realize that, what do? Krishna says, the wise who perfectly know this, they engage in my devotional service and they worship me with all their hearts. So one who has studied the Vedas perfectly has learned how to apply these teachings. And they can understand that Krishna, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the original source of this material creation. Everything that exists in creation has come about because of him. And knowing this, such a learned person naturally becomes firmly fixed in bhakti yoga, engages in loving devotional service under the guidance of a genuine, bona fide spiritual master. And this loving devotional service to Krishna it gradually leads to just complete, full surrender and ascending to the higher realms of bhakti, culminating in this prema bhakti, pure loving devotion unto the Supreme Lord. So this, we're hearing about this universal form, it's amazing. When we look at this universe, we see so much intelligent design, so much fine tuning, so much so that the conditions of the universe are sufficient to permit life. If conditions were just a little bit different, life could not exist here on this planet Earth. If the sun was just a few degrees closer to the Earth, or if there was no water, there was if just conditions were a little bit different, life could not possibly exist here on this Earth planet. So this strongly suggests that someone has arranged things in a certain way that everything can work very nicely and very perfectly. The human body itself acts as a finely tuned machine, doesn't it? Does anyone know how many atoms, they say, go to make up the material human form? I've heard that it's 1 octillion. You may have heard of a million or a trillion, but you may not have heard of an octillion. Medical science, they say it's 1 octillion atoms go to make up this material body. 1 octillion atoms. And it's interesting because, in the United States of America, they classify 1 octillion as 10 to 26 zeros after it. And in the British measurement, it's a 10 with 47 zeros. They say octillion. Anyhow, that many atoms go to make up this material body, and all these atoms are all working in symbiotic precision by the perfect arrangement of the supersoul or the Lord within the heart. It's not just going on by chance. Actually, it has been estimated that there may be as many as 200 trillion molecules in a single cell. Imagine that. 200 trillion molecules in a single cell, all executing thousands of coordinated reactions with precise timing and function by the perfect arrangement of the supersoul, not by chance. Many scientists and physicists, they often talk about the fine tuning of this universe regarding the physical workings of the universe, like, or something like gravity or something like that. However, they don't speak about the concept of a creator. We say, if there is intelligent design, there must be a designer, an intelligent being behind this fine-tuning, behind these universal laws that make everything work so perfectly and so systematically. The more we discover and think about the details of the physical world, we realize that everything is purposely designed. Nothing happens by chance. Nothing happens by chance. And as far as these molecular evolution goes, in which scientists present this theory that simple chemicals will lead to complex molecules and finally life has been accepted by many as right. They're teaching it in the schools, especially molecular biologists and evolutionists today. Yet why this evolution occurred, or what force compelled it to occur, is not clear. They say there's missing links. So though there are biologists, there's also biologists who confess that they do not understand how life came about. Considering even the most primitive cell requires at least 700 different biological micromolecules to exist. Incredible. How such a complex structure may have come about definitely brings up the possibility of the existence of a creator, a supreme intelligence behind this ordered universe. It seems that the discoveries of science in the last 50 years has pointed strongly to something beyond this universe as the ultimate cause. Why? Because nobody knows why the universe started. Nobody knows why it's finely tuned. Nobody knows how life started, or how the structure of these cells first started. Nobody knows these things. So all these things point strongly to an element beyond nature, either to a supreme controller or some unknown spiritual force. They don't know what it is. And this, of course, many scientists, realizing there's no explanation that can be found, have turned them towards philosophy, to explain this physical world. They say if you see a piece of paper, a piece of paper, you pick up a piece of paper, it has no value, just a piece of paper. But when the government assigns certain value to the paper in the form of money, it has value, it has meaning, it's useful, isn't it? Likewise, without understanding the divine purpose behind this creation and the ultimate purpose to our human life, our efforts in life may have very little value or meaning. You see this whole material creation, people are striving, so much effort and determination and utilization of the resources. But without understanding the divine purpose behind this creation and the ultimate purpose to our human life, our efforts in life, both individually and collectively, may have very little value, very little meaning. Yes. Therefore, the Vedic scriptures, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, they tell us that we must discover the purpose, the vision, the plan of the Supreme Lord behind this wonderful creation, and learn how to act in accordance to his cosmic plan. And this is what, in our bhakti school, in Krishna consciousness, is what we learn. We're learning about this. How to live in harmony with this universe. How to act according to the Lord's plan for this creation, which ultimately is to bring all living entities back to the spiritual world. Yes. It's interesting. And of course, there's many verses in the Bhagavad Gita that talk about this creation. The 9:10 is that verse. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, Krishna says, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So the background of this cosmic world is the supreme director, Krishna. And the management is being conducted by material nature under his supervision. And he is the father, it is said, he is the father of all living entities. For at the beginning of creation, he simply glanced upon the material nature and he injected all of us living entities into her womb. Thus, as mentioned in this previous verse, we all appear in various species of life according to our past karma from the previous creation and birth. So although this creation manifests due to the desire of the living entity to enjoy, independently imagining himself to be the Supreme Lord, we see it also offers an opportunity for the conditioned souls to gain liberation from this cycle of birth and death. And this is especially, we see in the human form of life, this opportunity is given. You know, when we talk about evolution, generally evolution, it conveys change, growth, elevation. From a biological perspective, it conveys evolution of species from lower to higher abilities. But another way of seeing evolution is to see it in the perspective of evolution of consciousness. In biological evolution, the change happens externally. But in the evolution of consciousness, the change happens internally. Biological evolution, as I was saying before, is debatable. So many theories about evolution. Prabhupada, it's like Darwin, Charles Darwin. Actually he wrote in his writings, there's so many gaps in my research towards my conclusions that I just speculated that it must be so. So Prabhupada mentions that Charles Darwin was a big speculator, or Prabhupada used to call him a mundane philosophical wrangler who depend upon their poor fund of knowledge and morbid speculative habits. Yes. Mainstream physical anthropologists, they agree amongst themselves that certain creatures split from the African apes about 6 million years ago, and they became a primitive type of man who evolved into a tool maker, a fire maker. Modern humans, they believe, arrived on the scene about 100,000 years ago. Actually many bones have been dug up with apes that seem to have upward walking abilities. There's a famous ape, they called Lucy. Have you heard of Lucy? In America, she's very popular. Lucy, they believe, is our oldest human ancestor. From her, everything began evolving. And Prabhupada often mentions that Darwin's great-grandfather was an ape. Because, as far as this evolution goes, Darwin said it only happened once. There seems to be missing links that sometimes there's freaks in nature. But we see in nature things don't happen once. Things are going on perpetually in perfect symmetry. There's no freaks of nature. You know, if you ask them to prove it, they'll say the best answer we can give right now is that we no longer have really a clear idea of who gave rise to whom. So what does this mean? This means that they haven't really discovered. It's just an article of faith. They haven't found the actual evolutionary path. But so many people believe this evolutionary theory. It's incredible. And one reason why this could be is because even though they've disproven this evolutionary theory so many times over the last 150 years, any evidence which contradicted the established evolutionary doctrines over the last 150 years has been eliminated from scientific discussion. They don't want to know about it. They're just attached to this theory, the evolutionary theory. So according to our ancient Vedic texts, like the Puranas, or histories, you know, our Puranas and histories, Vedic histories, date way back beyond recorded English history. And according to them, humans have not just, intelligent humans have not just existed for the last 100,000 years, but they've existed for vast periods. According to our basic cosmological calendar, Lord Brahma, who's the first created being in this universe, and this particular Lord Brahma appeared about 2 billion years ago, lives in the upper planetary systems. We find a different time dimension where Lord Brahma actually lives for 311 trillion 40 billion years. This may seem just fantastic. Imagine that, someone living for 311 trillion 40 billion years. But from the viewpoint of eternity, it's said to be as brief as a lightning flash. It's just a few seconds. And of course the Vedas tell us that in the causal ocean there's innumerable Brahmas rising and disappearing like bubbles in the ocean. So during this one day of Brahma, 1 day of Brahma is 4,320,000,000 years, the life or creation, including humans, becomes manifested on earth. There's like 1,000 cycles of 4 ages. And during this time, all 8,400,000 species of life come into existence simultaneously. And at the end of Brahma's day, 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas, there's a partial annihilation of the cosmos. It's like a dismantling of the universe. There's a whole description in the Bhagavatam how there's, 100 years of like floods, and there's, raindrops as big as elephants' trunks come down like big pillars. They flood the earth, and there's wind, and the whole cosmos, all the ingredients that go to make up material nature is dismantled. And it goes back into this suspended animation, like a deep sleep. And that includes all living entities. They go into a deep sleep. So according to our Vedic, and then time of creation, everything is set back into motion. So according to our Vedic text, it's not that intelligent human beings did not exist millions of years ago. On the contrary, it's understood that the most intelligent creature, Lord Brahma, the most intelligent creature, who was fully enlightened by the Supreme Lord, empowered to engineer the universe, he appeared a couple of billion years ago, just prior to creation. And of course, he in turn created many great saintly, intelligent personalities who became the progenitors of our original human race. Because a lot of mystery surrounds us. Where did we all come from? What's the origin of man? What's the origin of this creation? Yet the Vedic scriptures give us a complete understanding about what happened. Actually, even there's skeletal remains, footprints and artifacts that have been found that indicate intelligent human beings of our type have existed for hundreds of millions of years. And even the people that study these things, they understand that intelligent human beings didn't appear just 100,000 years ago. So it's not that so-called modern man's intelligence developed by the gradual process of evolution. Of course, many people, like I said, they're curious about this topic, the origin of man. They question this, that deep in history, did civilizations and advanced knowledge and culture thrive? Was there such a thing? Many mainstream scholars today have completely rejected this possibility, simply dismissed it. Even this Vedic knowledge, they just completely dismiss it as simply these fascinating accounts of other cultures, of ancient cultures. They simply dismiss it as they call it primitive tales. Primitive tales. And as far as the Vedas and Puranas, which give these amazing detailed descriptions of such advanced civilizations, there is a tendency amongst scholars to simply say that it's all concoction. It's all simply myth. So the question we may ask, is it possible for us to consider that our type of, this attempt that we have at civilization right now and our technological wizardry, could this only just be an eye blink in an unknown expanse of human history? Some people think, as I was saying, they're thinking we're cavemen. And suddenly, in later days, we evolved. We're now making computers, we're sending Sputniks into outer space. This is the most advanced that humans have ever been. So this Vedic literatures, they take things to a much deeper level, beyond our level. These scriptures are spoken from a divine perspective, from the perspective of eternity. From eternity, from the perspective of eternity, everything looks a lot different. We tend to look at the temporary situation, this life, things that are happening in it, our plans, our family members, kids growing up, people aging, our history books. People in general are so fully absorbed in physical and mental activities, in physical and mental identities, that generally they have no time and no need to ponder their true nature, to question, who am I? Or what is the divine purpose behind this creation? It only becomes relevant when we feel the call. And this may come after many, many lifetimes. Feel the call to find a deeper meaning to our life. When we feel that call, and many of us have probably felt that call, and that's what brought us to Krishna consciousness. When we feel that call, we're ready to inquire what lies beyond this short life. And it is said that this questioning is a natural call of our heart. So according to the Vedas, we didn't evolve up from matter. Rather, what happened? We didn't evolve, we de-evolved. We de-evolved. We came down from a level of pure spiritual consciousness. It means that we originally existed on a level of pure consciousness in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord. And when this relationship is broken, what happens? We come under the full control of this powerful, deluding material energy, which covers our consciousness, puts us in complete illusion. And we have no way of really tracing out when this happened to us. But once we realize we're an illusion, through transcendental knowledge and spiritual guidance, we can take positive steps to revive our original pure spiritual consciousness. So this Bhakti Yoga culture, which is guided by this Vedic knowledge spoken by our Creator and His bona fide representatives, we find a whole range of spiritual techniques, so many things, so we may re-evolve back to a higher level of pure consciousness. Then we will directly experience this consciousness evolution. It is said that spiritual evolution of consciousness, or consciousness evolution, is about growing beautiful flowers in the desert. You know, we may say, well, how do you grow beautiful flowers in a desert? It is said that our heart actually is like a desert. Due to thousands of lifetimes in the material world, our original pure spiritual consciousness, it's covered over and is sleeping. We cannot understand or see our true spiritual identity. Therefore, our heart is said to be like a desert. However, even in the dry, barren desert, if it rains continually for days, what happens? Beautiful flowers can grow. You see this in the middle of Australia. It's so barren. But sometimes it rains out there and suddenly all this vegetation just comes to life. Incredible. So similarly, transcendental knowledge and wisdom is like an incessant shower of rainfall on our hearts, which can make our life very meaningful and our destiny very beautiful. And this, we're so fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has come and he's translated all these Vedic literatures into English and given us, just like a loving father has given us this incredible spiritual education. Woken us up from our deep sleep and give us a complete understanding of everything that's happening in this world. I'll just finish it. Does anyone have any questions I'd like to ask? Any questions? Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.